It was a planet untamed, a vast, roaring wilderness where survival was never promised. The wind carried the scent of rain and blood, and every sound in the distance could mean life or death. Millions of years ago, before the concept of civilization even existed, small bands of early humans clung to existence in a world ruled by giants, predators with teeth like daggers, and landscapes sculpted by fire, ice, and time itself. Imagine standing in their place. No walls, no weapons of iron, no safety, but the unity of your own group. Every sunrise was a gamble, and every night brought the fear of eyes gleaming in the darkness. In this chaos, humanity's first families emerged, fragile yet resilient, learning to read the whispers of nature and the rhythm of the hunt. They didn't just survive, they adapted, learned, and began to dominate through cooperation rather than sheer strength. But what kind of world demanded such evolution? The climate was ruthless. Scorching droughts followed. By freezing storms, fertile valleys transforming into barren plains within generations. Volcanic eruptions darkened the skies, while herds of colossal beasts migrated across endless horizons. Every resource, from water to food, meant conflict, and only those who could think, organize, and trust one another would endure. This was the crucible that shaped the earliest human clans, a world that forced instinct to become intelligence. Through pain, hunger, and loss, they discovered the first sparks of empathy, strategy, and leadership. The wilderness did not only test them, it forged the very essence of what it means to be human. And if you're captivated by this glimpse into our most primal past, take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think it truly took to survive in a world where nature showed no mercy? Now, let's step closer into their daily struggle, the hunt, the fear, and the fire that kept them alive against impossible odds. Every dawn began with a decision, to stay hidden or to move, to hunt or to flee. For the first human families, survival wasn't a choice made in comfort. It was a negotiation with death, renewed every single day. The earth itself was a battlefield, not between nations, but between species fighting for the same breath of air, the same drop of water, the same kill left rotting under the sun. In this harsh theater, early humans were neither apex predators nor helpless prey. They existed in the fragile space between, always calculating, always watching. They tracked herds of bison and giant elk, but they also knew the shadow of a saber-toothed cat could erase them in seconds. Every sound in the distance carried meaning. The crack of branches, the call of vultures, the growl that froze the blood in their veins. Each moment was a test of instinct, sharpened by necessity. To hunt meant risk. A failed ambush could end with an injured hunter, and one wound could doom the entire group. Yet hunger left no room for hesitation. Using crude spears tipped with sharpened stone, they coordinated movements with silent signals, learning to surround prey with intelligence rather than speed. Cooperation became their only weapon against extinction. When food was scarce, they scavenged from predators' kills, gambling with death for the promise of meat and marrow. But just as they were hunted too, not only by beasts, but by other human groups. Competition for territory, water, and shelter was relentless. When stronger bands approached, families abandoned their fires, carrying children and tools into the unknown. They became refugees of the wild, ghosts moving through the forests and plains in search of a place to breathe another day. Still, from this endless cycle of pursuit and retreat, something extraordinary began to form. A shared understanding of survival, a memory passed through generations. In each story whispered by firelight, in every scar carried home, humanity learned a truth that would define it forever. Survival was not about strength alone, but about learning, adapting, and standing together. Now let's go deeper into the bond that made this possible. The unity that turned fragile families into powerful clans, the birth of cooperation that changed the destiny of our kind. In the chaos of a primeval world, where storms tore through valleys and predators ruled the plains, one truth began to emerge. Alone, no one survived. For the first time in history, survival depended not only on instinct, but on connection. Early humans began to understand that strength was multiplied when shared, that a watchful eye or an extra hand could mean the difference between life and extinction. Around their flickering fires, bonds were forged in fear and necessity, a mother's protection, a father's vigilance, the laughter of a child. These weren't mere instincts. They were the first threads of something far greater: community. Within these fragile circles of light, trust became a weapon as powerful as any spear. A single cry could bring the group together in defense. A single gesture could organize a hunt. For the first time, cooperation became a survival strategy. As they hunted and gathered, early families began to specialize. Some watched the skies and read the weather, others crafted sharper stones or learned the paths of the migrating herds. Knowledge was no longer held by individuals. It was shared, taught, remembered. And in this exchange, culture was born. Songs, rituals, and gestures became silent languages that carried across generations, preserving lessons carved from blood and struggle. But unity wasn't just about sharing food or defending territory. It created something deeper: empathy. When one fell, others carried the load. When hunger struck, they divided what little they had. This emotional bond, so simple yet profound, set humanity apart from every other creature on Earth. It was the first glimpse of what would one day become civilization. Still, unity had its cost. Leadership emerged, bringing both guidance and conflict. Who would decide when to fight or flee? Who held the wisdom to lead others through danger? These questions began to shape the earliest hierarchies, sowing the seeds of power that would one day dominate human history. Through firelight, through fear, through shared breath and blood, humanity learned its greatest lesson. Survival was never about being the strongest or fastest, but about standing together when the world tried to tear them apart. Now let's step into the darkness where unity was tested, when loyalty turned into conflict and family into rival tribe. The dawn of war among humans was about to begin. It began with a shadow across the valley, strangers moving toward the same river, the same hunting grounds. To the early clans, every group beyond their own was both a mystery and a threat. The instinct to protect their families, their fire, their food, soon evolved into something far more complex and dangerous: organized conflict. The dawn of war among humans did not begin with ambition, it began with fear. At first, the signs were small: distant footprints, missing tools, scattered ashes from another tribe's campfire. But soon, tension turned to confrontation. A single spark, a single misinterpreted gesture, could ignite a violent struggle. Stone weapons clashed, screams echoed through the forests, and for the first time, blood was spilled not for food, but for dominance. These were not mere skirmishes. They were the birth of human warfare. Yet behind the violence, there was structure. Each group had defenders, scouts, and strategists. The same intelligence that once coordinated hunts was now turned against their own kind. The art of survival became the art of conflict. Victory meant resources, safety, and territory, the foundations of power. Defeat meant exile or extinction. But even as they fought, there was something undeniably human in the chaos. Warriors protected their kin with desperate courage. Mothers carried their children away from burning camps, their eyes filled with both terror and defiance. Around the dying fires, elders spoke of revenge, of reclaiming honor, and thus memory became the seed of vengeance, passed from one generation to the next. Through these brutal confrontations, humanity learned another harsh truth. Violence could unite as much as it divided. Tribes grew stronger, more disciplined, more organized. And amid the ashes, the concept of leadership took root. Those who could command courage in others became symbols of survival. Even now, when we look at the conflicts of the modern world, echoes of these primal struggles remain. The same instinct that drove ancient humans to defend their kin still pulses in us. The drive to protect, to belong, to survive. What do you think pushed our ancestors to fight? Fear, or the need to prove they could endure a hostile world? Share your thoughts below, and let's continue exploring how these early battles shaped the destiny of humankind. While men often ventured into the wilderness to hunt or defend the clan, the survival of humanity itself rested in the hands of those who stayed behind. The women who guarded the fire, the children, and the fragile rhythm of daily life. Their role was not passive. It was the foundation upon which every tribe stood. In their vigilance and intuition lay the true heartbeat of survival. The fire they protected was more than warmth or light. It was continuity. Flames meant safety against predators, heat to cook food, and a place to gather when the world outside turned hostile. Around those glowing embers, knowledge was passed, wounds were healed, and the next generation was taught to endure. If the hunters were the spear of humanity, women were its flame, steady, enduring, and essential. But their contribution went far beyond nurturing. They were builders of memory, keepers of stories, and observers of nature's patterns. They learned when seasons shifted, when the herds would move, when storms would rise. Through instinct and patience, they developed the first signs of medicine: herbs to heal, roots to numb pain, rituals to comfort the dying. Their understanding of life and death became an unspoken science long before words for science existed. In many clans, female leadership emerged naturally. Age brought wisdom, and wisdom earned respect. Elder women became the voices that guided decisions, resolving disputes and determining when to move the tribe. Beneath the surface of a world defined by brute force, it was their quiet authority that kept balance between chaos and order, between hunger and hope. Through the cycles of birth and loss, they preserved the essence of humanity: compassion. They buried the dead with care, taught children to share food, and offered comfort even in despair. These acts, small and unseen, were what transformed survival into something more than instinct. They turned it into civilization's first form of empathy. The world outside their fires was ruthless, but within that circle of warmth, the first lessons of cooperation and culture took shape. It was there, in the glow of the flames, that the story of human resilience truly began. Now, as the clans grow stronger and the environment grows harsher, the question becomes, who owns the land they walk on? The struggle for territory and power is about to begin. The earth, vast and unforgiving, offered abundance only to those bold enough to claim it. For the first human clans, territory was more than land. It was identity, memory, and survival. Every riverbed, every grove, every cave carried the echo of past hunts and lost lives. Yet as populations grew and resources thinned, the silent struggle for dominance began to shape the destiny of early humanity. At first, borders were invisible, marked only by scent, sound, and familiarity. A group knew its home by the trees that sheltered them or the rocks that told them where predators lurked. But when others trespassed, instinct spoke louder than reason. The right to water, shelter, or game became sacred. worth defending with blood. Over time, this instinct evolved into strategy. Patrols, scouts, and alliances forged through necessity rather than trust. Those who mastered the land prospered. They read the wind, followed migrations, and learned the terrain like a second skin. Knowledge of the environment became a weapon as powerful as any spear. Clans that understood how to move with the seasons gained strength. Those who stayed too long in one place risked starvation or invasion. The earth itself became a chessboard, and only the most adaptable survived. Leadership, once born from age or wisdom, now required cunning and control. Power was no longer about brute force alone. It was about influence, the ability to lead others without breaking them. Charismatic leaders emerged, figures who could inspire loyalty, command fear, or manipulate alliances between tribes. Some clans grew under these rulers, expanding their territory. Others fell into ruin, victims of ambition or betrayal. Yet beneath this expanding web of power, a quiet truth lingered. No territory ever truly belonged to anyone. Nature's wrath could reclaim it in a single storm, and the earth's creatures cared nothing for human boundaries. Still, the desire to claim, to possess, to rule, it became part of the human condition, a fire that would never fade. This was the dawn of ownership, of dominance, of the idea that survival could be secured through control. And with it came a dangerous realization. The true enemy was not always outside the tribe. Sometimes it was born within. Next, we'll step into the darkness of the wild once more, where night brought not peace, but terror, when the clans faced their most relentless enemies. When the sun sank beyond the horizon, the true test of survival began. The night belonged to predators. The rustle of leaves, the crack of distant branches, the low growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground, all reminders that danger was never far. For early humans, darkness was both a physical and psychological battlefield. Every flickering shadow could hide fangs and claws. Every heartbeat echoed the question, would they make it to dawn? Fire was their only shield. Its light kept beasts at bay. Its smoke carried warnings through the wind. Around it, families huddled, close, eyes scanning the blackness beyond the glow. They whispered, listened, and waited. Sleep came in shifts. Some kept watch while others dreamed fitfully of safety that never truly existed. The world outside the firelight pulsed with movement. Saber-toothed cats, hyenas larger than any known today, and packs of wolves drawn by the scent of human life. But amid that fear, something powerful emerged, unity through shared terror. The same fear that could break them apart began to fuse them. Together, each person had a role: to feed the fire, to keep children quiet, to signal when something moved in the dark. They learned to trust one another without words. They learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to stand guard despite it. Over generations, these nightly vigils forged the first foundations of human cooperation. Storytelling was born here. As voices tried to calm trembling hearts, tales of ancestors and spirits filled the air, transforming fear into meaning. Around those fires, imagination became a tool for endurance, giving names to the unseen and courage to the living. Still, some nights claimed victims. A scream in the dark, a broken spear, a trail of blood, reminders that even together they were fragile creatures in a hostile world. Yet every loss taught a lesson. They learned to build stronger camps, to use smoke and noise as deterrents, and to study the habits of predators. The hunted began to think like the hunter. From those sleepless nights, humanity emerged more aware, more organized, and more determined. The darkness that once brought only terror became the crucible of their intelligence, a place where fear shaped resilience, And as dawn broke, revealing the pale remains of fires and footprints around them, one truth became clear. To survive, they would need more than courage. They would need belief in themselves, in each other, and in forces greater than they could see. What do you think it felt like to face that darkness every night, knowing that the only light between life and death was a single flame? Share your thoughts below, and let's uncover how these fears evolved into the first human rituals. As humanity learned to survive the night, something new began to stir within them, a spark of imagination that reached beyond mere existence. The dangers of the world forced early humans to look for patterns, meaning, and connection in everything around them. The rustling wind, the phases of the moon, the return of herds, nothing was random. From this search for understanding, the first rituals were born. At the edge of their fires, where fear met wonder, they began to tell stories, not just to explain the unknown, but to give it purpose. The spirits of the hunt, the guardians of fire, the ancestors who watched over them, these beliefs became invisible companions in their struggle for survival. Each hunt, each birth, each death demanded a gesture, a word, a rhythm that tied the living to the forces they could not see. Ritual became both a shield and a guide. Burials were among the earliest expressions of this awakening. Bodies were covered with ochre, adorned with tools and ornaments, as if prepared for a journey beyond. Such acts were not mere superstition. They were declarations of love, grief, and continuity. Through them, humans began to define themselves not only by survival, but by memory and hope. Codes of behavior emerged naturally from these shared beliefs. To steal food from another, to disrespect the dead, to abandon the weak. These were not just practical violations, they were offenses against the order of life itself. Morality, born from necessity, began to shape the first societies. It was no longer just about who was strong, but who was trusted. The fires that once kept predators away now illuminated rituals of dance and sound. The rhythmic beating of stones, the stamping of feet, the pulse of chants. These were the first expressions of art, of community, of identity. In those moments, humanity was no longer just surviving, it was creating meaning out of chaos. These rituals forged a new kind of strength, one that came not from muscle or speed, but from shared belief. When the world around them felt vast and merciless, faith in unseen forces gave comfort, courage, and purpose. The first myths were not lies, they were survival tools for the mind and soul. And as generations passed, this invisible web of culture began to bind clans into something larger, the first glimpses of civilization. But survival demanded more than faith. The earth was changing, climates shifting, predators evolving. The only weapon left was adaptation, the ability to reshape thought and strategy faster than the world itself. The world would not wait for humanity to catch up. Storms grew harsher, beasts more cunning, and the landscape itself shifted under their feet. Those who could not adapt vanished into the dust of prehistory. But among the survivors, something extraordinary began to evolve. A new kind of power, invisible yet unstoppable, intelligence. Adaptation was no longer a matter of physical change. Humanity had already reached its limit in muscle and claw. Instead, survival became a battle of minds. The same curiosity that once made them stare into fire now drove them to shape stone, bone, and wood into tools that bent nature to their will. Spears hardened in flame, traps set with precision, shelters carved into cliffs. Every invention was a declaration of defiance against extinction. Observation turned into understanding. The early humans studied the patterns of predators, learned the trails of prey, and predicted the rhythm of the seasons. What once was instinct became strategy. A broken branch was no longer just noise, it was information. The color of the sky foretold the coming of storms. Even the stars began to guide their migrations across vast lands. The mind had become their strongest weapon. But intelligence came with complexity. Curiosity led to experimentation, and experimentation to discovery. Fire made stronger, tools sharper, plans more coordinated. Tribes began to cooperate on scales never seen before, building collective knowledge that would one day lead to language itself. Words became tools of power, allowing them to share not just warnings, but dreams. Still, evolution had its price. As they grew smarter, they also became more ambitious and more dangerous. They could now plan hunts that wiped out entire herds, craft strategies to outwit rival clans, even manipulate the environment to their advantage. With each innovation, humanity gained control over its fate, but also over others. Intelligence transformed survival into dominance. And yet beneath that rise lay a fragile truth. Every step forward distanced them from the natural balance they once obeyed. They were no longer creatures of the world, but beings shaping it. The same mind that secured their survival also set them on a path of irreversible change. From the caves to the open plains, humanity had learned to think, to adapt, to conquer. But what they did not yet understand was that survival would never truly end. It would only evolve. Now, in the final part of our journey, we'll look at what remains of those first lessons. How the struggle, the fear, and the hope of our ancestors still echo in who we are today. Long after their fires died and their footprints were erased by time, the spirit of those first humans endures. Not in bones or tools, but in us. Every heartbeat, every instinct to protect, to explore, to rise again after defeat, carries the echo of lives lived under the relentless sky of prehistory. We are their continuation, the living memory of millions of years of survival, fear, courage, and adaptation. Their struggles were not forgotten. They were written into our biology. The rush of adrenaline in moments of danger, the comfort of gathering with others, the yearning to understand the unknown. These are the remnants of a world where survival demanded unity and awareness. Each fragment of instinct that once kept them alive still whispers beneath the surface of modern life. The fear of the dark, the fascination with fire, the reverence for the earth, all of it connects us to those ancient nights around the flame. But their legacy is more than instinct. It is the story of transformation. They took chaos and made order, turned fear into learning, and carved meaning from the merciless landscape. Through them, humanity learned that strength was not the absence of weakness, but the ability to endure despite it. Their discoveries, the use of tools, the mastery of fire, the creation of art and ritual, became the foundation upon which every future civilization would stand. Yet in our world of cities, light, and technology, we often forget how much of their world remains within us. When we look at the stars, we echo their wonder. When we defend our families, we mirror their courage. And when we tell stories, stories of love, struggle, and survival, we continue the same ancient ritual that once bound them together through the terror of the night. Their journey did not end. It evolved. From the savannas to the modern world, humanity still seeks the same things: belonging, understanding, purpose. We are the inheritors of their resilience, the torchbearers of a fire that has never gone out. So, as we close this journey through time, remember, we are not separate from them. Every breath we take, every act of creation and compassion is a tribute to those who walked before us, the first families who faced a world of beasts and storms and still dared to survive. Their fight made us human. And if this story moved you, if you felt the weight of that distant past shaping your own reflection, share this video with those who still wonder where we came from. Because the story of humanity isn't over. It's still being written, one generation at a time.